We're now learning the sugya at the beginning of the fourth parak of Yevamot Achotz Liyavimto on Daf Lamed Vav, and we have. Let's see where we could start here.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
we were up to Ela Amarava.
Elo Amarava.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, because I don't have my Gemara here. So, okay. So this is line 3, correct? Is that correct, Don? Line 3, the third line from the top?
Starts the end of the second line.
Okay, great. Se'elam Arava Hachi Kamar. Now we're explaining according to Rabbi Yochanan. Akones Yevimto v'nimtzeis muberes harezu lo tinasei tzarasa. We're not going to allow at this moment the tzara to get married. Why? Because Shema Yehev Vlad ben Kayoma. Let's assume that the Yavama will carry to full term and she'll give birth to a viable child. And therefore, bias muberes lo shma bia. So there was never a yibum, and chalitzas muberes lo shma chalitza. So why shouldn't the tzara get married in this case? Lo tinasei taras. I don't understand. You're worried about the fact that there'll be a vlad shel kayoma. If there's a vlad shel kayoma, then there's no nefila for yibum. So he writes here, "Tam shelo tinasei tzarasa af sheyesh lebal abanim ein zkuk liyibum mishum shavlad eino poter ad sheyetze li'avir ha'olam." So the status of a vlad to remove zikas yibum only applies after the vlad is born. But before it pops its head out, then we consider it as if the Bailim the deceased, right, doesn't have any children. So therefore, at that moment, she's Asura L'Shuk. Even if as luck would have it, Baruch Hashem, the baby is born and so forth, the Ben Kayoma, but nevertheless, until the baby is actually born, we have to assume the possibility of Yibum. Or maybe we could say even better than that. There is Yibum. Why? Because the late husband did not leave any children. Although his wife is pregnant, but right now, as the clock as it ticks off today, he has no children. And olam, until the Vlad actually is born in a state of an embryonic state, it does not pater up Yibum. So what now is the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? We talk about bias muberes. We talk about chalitzas muberes. Does it have the status of chalitza? Does it have the status of bias yibum? So again, we're saying now, according to Rava, a very revolutionary idea that a vlad could remove the status of yibum, but only after it's born. So both the Yevama and the Tzara of the Yevama are enjoined from getting married until such time as the baby is born. Yatsa li'aver olam. I'm not sure if that's a Doraisa halacha or a D'Rabbanan halacha. My impression is that we're dealing with a Doraisa halacha. Tanya Kavase de Rava Hakones Yevim Tovidim Seismu Beres Harezo Lotinose Tsarasa Shemi Vlad ben Kayama. Of course, again, if the Vlad turns out to be a Nefel, then the Yibum was a valid Yibum, and the Tzara is a free agent. She can marry whoever she wants. But on the side that the Vlad is a Ben Kayama, it's counterintuitive, the Tzara can't get married. Lo tinase tzaras. On that side, that the baby will be a viable baby, which means there's no Yibum. So why can't the Tzara get married? But the answer is Rava's principle of Ad Sheyetzi La'aver Ha'olam. Ve'ein Bia V'chalitza, in the case of Uberes, Poteres, meaning it doesn't undermine the Zika, Ella Vlad Poter, if the Vlad turns out to be a Ben Kayoma, Vlad Eino Potra Ad Sheyetzi La'aver Ha'olam. Explicit like Rav. So again, the P'tur from Yibum for both the Yivam and the Tzara can only emerge after the Leda. So the Gemara has to find Kasha, Taima, the reason why the Bia of Yivam and Muperes is not effective is Shemiye Vlad ben Kayamahu. Because we're afraid that maybe this Vlad, as it will turn out, will be a viable Vlad. And we have to wait till the Leda of the Vlad to generate the P'tur of Yibum Chalitza. Lo havi Vlad ben Kayoma. What if at the end of the day, the Vlad is a Nefel and it doesn't have the status of a viable being, which means that there was Yibum, is then Miftarei Tzarasa. The Tzara is a free agent if the Vlad is a Nefel. And why is that so? Because then the Bia of the Yavam is a valid Bia, and it generates a full-fledged Kinyan Ishus. And not only that, we don't require that the Yavam repeat his Be'ila a second time after she miscarries. Is Lemetevi Tiyuv to the Reish Lakish. Now we have a Kasha Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish holds that Bias Me'uberes, even if the Vlad is a Nefel, is not considered a Bia, and the Chalitza is not considered Chalitza. The Brisa seems to assume that if the Vlad is not a Ben Kayom, but turns out to be a Nefel, then the Yavam's action of Bia is valid. And therefore the Tzara is P'tura min ha'yibum min ha'chalitza. That's against Reish Lakish. So again, let's just summarize. Reish Lakish holds that Bias Muberes is nothing. Period. It's out. Just cross it out, erase it. Even if afterwards he pila, it doesn't matter. Since she was muberes, therefore it's not a valid bia, it's not a valid chalitza. The Brisa seems to say just the opposite. That if the Vlad is an Eino ben Kayama, and the Yavam went ahead and he was miyabim this woman who's a muberes, then the tzara doesn't need anything. And we recognize the validity of that bia. And he doesn't have to repeat the bia later on after the Vlad is, so to speak, emerges as a nefel. Because this brisa is based on the fact that Shema Yehi Vlad ben Kayama and Eina Vlad Potra Achietze Avir Olam. But on the side that the Vlad is a ben Kayama, then Eina Chinami, the tzara would be muteres with the bia of the Yavam, because bias muberesh made bia. Amalacharish Lakish. You have to change the text of the Brisa. Hachi Ketani. Don't read it, Shema Yehi Vlad ben Kayama. But rather, Hakonis Yivim didn't say Smuberes Hareza Lotinase Tarasa Shema Lo Yehi Vlad Shel Kayama. We're worried about the fact that it's so fascinating. We're worried about the fact that there will be Yibum, meaning that she does fall for Yibum because the Vlad is a Vlad She'ena ben Kayov, it's a Nefel. But, and here's Reish Lakish's plug, that Chalitzas Muberes, Lo Shmei Chalitza Bilas Muberes, Lo Shmei Bia. And therefore we don't have a Bia of Yibum that would batter up the Tzara. So now the Brisa reads, Shavlad ein potra ad sheyetze avra olam. Well, what's that about? I mean, it sounds like we're talking about a Vlad shel kayom. And according to Girsa that Reish Lakish is replacing here, it's Shalom Yehi Vlad shel kayom. So we're going to interpret it im tomar halach acharov noshim, v'rov noshim Vlad mi'al yoldon. So we can rely on Rov that she will carry to term and deliver a viable being. Is therefore the bia is not a bia, because based on this Rov, we can anticipate that she'll give birth to a viable child. So it's Zera Yeshlo, not Zera Einlo. So there's no Yibum. She's an erev of a chos of Eshes Achiv. There's no Yibum here at all, right? There's no Zikas Yibum at all if you rely on this Rov. So what now is Havlad Eino Potra Chiyetze Li'avir Olam? Right, we're assuming now that the Vlad will be a Vlad Shel Kayoma. If it's a Vlad Shel Kayoma, then let the Tzara marry someone else. There's no Yibum here. But the answer is, Ein Havlad Poter Ad Sheyetze Li'aver Olam. Omer Abelazar, Efshar Isa Lahadresh Lakish, Velotnan La Bimasnisen. Are you telling me that it's possible that we're going to paskin la halacha like Reish Lakish, that bias and chalitzas mu'beres lo shmei bia v'chalitza, For lo tnan lo b'masnisa. This is such an important principle of Reish Lakish that it should find its way into the Mishnah somewhere. That's what Rabbi Elazar wants. Nafak, and Rabbi Elazar went out after he gave this whole speech to the Beis Medrash. He went out looking for Dak v'Ashkach, and he found a Mishnah that supports Reish Lakish. Hisnan, we learned in a Mishnah, Ha'isha shaholach baila v'tzarasa limedinas hayam. You remember this? We learned this together. So her husband and Hatzara went out to Medina Sayyam. There were no children. Bo v'yamrila meis balech is harezu lo tinase. Why can't she get married? I mean, they testify that her husband died. V'lo tisyabim ad sheteda shema muberes hitzaros. So if Hatzara accompanies her husband to Medina Sayyam, there is a possibility that her husband, before he died, left his wife, meaning the Tzara, pregnant. So even though technically she should fall for Yibum, after the witnesses testify the Meis Baila, but we're not going to allow Yibum until we're absolutely certain that the Tzara is not pregnant. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but why is that a source for Reish Lakish? So Gemara analyzes it. Because maybe the Tzara is pregnant, Bishema, she might give birth, Vlad Shal Kayama, and therefore Yivka Be'isher Eishes Ishto Raisa. Ella Lo Tachlo Tzamai. Why shouldn't we allow Chalitza and then she can get married? Ishlema, I understand what it says that there should be no Chalitza b'toch Tisha. B'tinase b'toch Tisha. So again, within the 9-month period since her husband's death, she shouldn't be allowed to get remarried. And why is that? Lo hainu suffix. Oh, I'm sorry. Lo comma hainu suffix. In other words, since that there's a possibility that the Tzara is muberes and she'll give birth to a Vlad Shal Kayoma, so we have to wait the full 9 months before we can allow the other wife, the local wife, to get remarried, to guarantee for sure that there is Yibum. Now he adds a few words. He says, "V'oz eina chalitza v'yimim potrim elrak leda savlad v'hi adayin asur l'shuk." So again, as far as yibum is concerned, we're not going to allow yibum because of the possibility that A, the tzara is muberes, and B, she will carry till full term. So we can't play with fire. So we have to avoid that situation of suffix, and therefore require that the yibum should not take place within the 9-month period of time after her husband's death. Ela shelo tachlos b'tov shiva. Why can't there be a chalitza within the 9-month period of time after husband dies? But we'll have to require that they postpone her marriage to someone else for 9 months. So what is the Gemara? What is the Gemara trying to prove here? Is this I get the impression that the Gemara is asking a kasha, but I'm not exactly sure what is the upshot of this kasha. Let me see if I can work on that and clarify that. The Gemara is arguing that under the following conditions, everything is covered. We have no problems. Condition number 1 is that she receives chalitza. Condition number 2 is that she postpones getting married until after 9 months. If she postpones getting married until after 9 months, I mean, everything is fine. Why? Because if the tzara is muberes and she gives birth to a full vital child, so then everything is fine. There's no yibum. Just 1 second. That there's no yibum. Ella, what? Maybe she's not muberes, or alternatively, she's muberes, but she won't carry to full term, which means that there is yibum, but she got chalitza. So in Manavshach, we've covered all the bases. So why should the Mishnah say that lo tachlos? Why not? I mean, I have a sense that intuitively that if we allow chalitza, maybe she'll go ahead and she'll get married. Now, what's the status of the chalitza that she received during the 9-month period? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, that would be a chalitza muberes, which would be valid. So if the tzara will give birth to a vlad shal kayama, and the vlad was yotze liavra olam, So that means that the deceased died leaving children behind. There's no nefila yibum. She doesn't need chalitza. She's mutar l'shuk. So why weren't they matir chalitza toch tisha? Oh, Ella. Well, this is what I was looking for. Ella muchach chetchayshinon shema isa tzarasa muberes b'shas chalitza. The yolda vlad she'eno shel kayama. The imtachlots ena chalita mo'ila kevan shebias muberes v'chalitzasa ena klum. Now we can support Reish Lakish. Even though at the end of the day, she did not give birth to a viable child, but rather hipila, nevertheless, the bia, or alternatively the chalitza, at that moment of muberes, is eina klum. I mean, that was the drasha that we had to Reish Lakish from Ayin Olam. So we now have a Mishnah to support Reish Lakish. And that was what Rabbi Elazar was searching for, right? Nafak, Dok, V'ashkach. He was trying to find some Mishnah which would support Reish Lakish. And he finally found one. So the Gemara asks on Rabbi Elazar l'taimech tachlots v'tinasi lachar tisha. So you're saying that the correct understanding of the Mishnah is that she's not allowed to have chalitza and get married because we're afraid maybe the chalitza took place when the tzara was muberes. And therefore chalitza's muberes ain't a klum. Is imkain madua asura linose ad sheteda im tzarasa meuberes. We should say tachlots after 9 months. V'tinasi le'achar tisha. Just 1 second. So we brought a raya to Reish Lakish from a Mishnah, no? Of Meispila, Bov Yomula Meispilech, Arezulo Tachlos. And why is that? Because Chalitzas Muberes, Lochmei Chalitza, according to Reish Lakish. And we're now holding the possibility that the tzara was Muberes. So that's Reish Lakish, that tzaras, that Chalitzas Muberes, Lav Shmei Chalitza. Okay. So what's the Gemara's kasha now? Ulitamech, according to your explanation of the Mishnah, that chalitza is not acceptable to allow to get married because we're afraid that maybe the tzara is muberes, and according to Reish Lakish, chalitzas muberes ain't a klum. So what's barring the Gemara? Tachlots v'tinase liachar tisha. What does the Mishnah say? Lo tachnots, velo tisyavim. I got it. I think I got it now. The Mishnah is telling us that when the husband went out to Medina Sayyam and the tzara went with him, we have to find out whether the tzara is muberes or not. And when the Mishnah says lo tachlots, velo tinose, velo tisyavim ad sheteda shema muberesi. Ad sheteda, I think, means ad infinitum, even ad bias goel till the Mashiach comes. We have to get a hold of the tzara and find out whether she's muberes or not. And until we do so, there's no possibility of chalitza. So the Gemara asks, it can't make any sense. Let her have chalitza, and we'll wait until 9 months passes, and then mimarashav, no matter how you cut the cake, she's allowed to get married. Why are you waiting until we finally get a hold of the muberes? Ella, says the Gemara, bar minei dahi. You can't bring a raya from that source. I don't know. He says it's a brisa. I thought it was a Mishnah. Anyway, it says shelo tachlos b'toch tes, b'tinose lacher tes. Right? The brisa doesn't allow a chalitza within 9 months, and wait until after the 9 months to allow her to get married. The reason for that is the Abaye bar Abba Rav Chinna bar Abaye the Amri Chavayu. The reason why she has to wait and she shouldn't get chalitza until we know for sure whether the tzara is muberes or not is Wechoshe Shemaye Vlad ben Kayoma. That maybe the tzara is carrying a baby to term. The chalitza, therefore, is not a chalitza. She's allowed to marry a Kohen, but people saw the chalitza. They don't know that this chalitza is not worth a dime. They can assume that she's a chalutza, and she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. V'nimtza shata matzricha cruz lekuna. That Beis Din would have to make an announcement, a public announcement, that she is kshera lekuna, and that this chalitza does not engender a psul Beis Din yachrizu sheyedu, make it public knowledge, she kshera lekuna, v'lo paslasa chalitza, because the vlad is a vlad of shel kayama, and the chalitza is totally meaningless. Ukidei shelo yitztarchu lahachriz, to spare the Beis Din of this tremendous undertaking, this headache of having to send out a hachraza, a cruise, therefore lo tachlos hasheteda, till she finally knows for sure whether or not the tzara is muberes. So the Gemara says, "V'litzrucha," and what's the big deal? So you're imposing upon Beis Din a little bit of a hassle that they should send out a cruise, an announcement. So therefore, you're going to say that she can't get married until we find out for sure whether the tzara is muberes or not. I mean, that could take years. That's not fair. So the Gemara answers that the Chacham Choshesh Dilma Ika Inish the Havi Bechalitza will Havi Bachraza. We don't mind imposing upon Bezdin Achraza, but we have to worry about the possibility that there were witnesses, there were spectators who saw the Chalitza, but they weren't around for the Achraza. So all they know about is the Chalitza. They don't know anything about the Achraza. And once again, we have the problem, the Asi Lememar Kashari Chalutza Lekohen. We have to be afraid of the fact that they're saying, well, you matir Chalutza to a Kohen? Oh, a Chalutza is allowed to marry a Kohen? Therefore, we're going to say, don't get married until we know for sure that the tzara is or is not muberes. If she's muberes, then you can get married. We don't need anything. If she's not muberes, then you need chalitza. So we're going to postpone the chalitza because otherwise, if we allow for chalitza, then the muberes the tzara turns out to be again, what are we afraid of? If the Vlad will be a Vlad shel Kayama, and the Chalitza therefore is meaningless, but the spectator thinks that the Chalitza is a real bona fide Chalitza. Now you're going to tell us she's allowed to marry a Kohen. They're going to think that they come to the wrong conclusion that a Chalitza is allowed to marry a Kohen. Amalei Abai says to Rabbi Lazar, Midi lo tachlot lo tisyavim ktoni. Does it say in the Brisa that we don't allow for chalitza because maybe the tzar is muberes, and therefore you said that the chalitza muberes is not a chalitza and she can't get married even if she got a chalitza? It says lo tinase v'lo tisyavim ktoni, v'lo chalitza. In other words, she can't assume that the tzara is going to carry to full term. No, we're not going to rely on that. And therefore, she can't get married because we have to consider the possibility that the muberes will not come to full term, will not carry to full term, and therefore she needs chalitza. But if he received chalitza, if she received chalitza within the 9-month period, even though it's within achinami the sharia, we could certainly be mater her after the 9 months with the mimanavsha. Because the chalitza v'muberes shmei chalitza, it's a valid chalitza, and therefore, even in an event that the tzara turns out not to be muberes, or she doesn't carry to term, the chalitza, the original chalitza, is valid, and the brisa could certainly square with Rabbi Yochanan. So therefore, you don't have a raya from this brisa to support Reish Lakish. But in any event, Tanya Kavos to Reish Lakish. Acholetz lemuberes b'pila tzricha chalitza min ha'achim. Even though at the end of the day she was mapila, so therefore the chalitza turns out to be a valid chalitza. No, we need a replacement chalitza. Why? Because chalitza's muberes lo shmei chalitza, and that's Reish Lakish. So at this point, we're going to end for today. It seems that the Gemara's final conclusion is that we paskin like Reish Lakish, which is really interesting. I thought the whole flow of the Gemara would be to paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. We generally speak paskin like Rabbi Yochanan against Reish Lakish. I guess this is one of the exceptions. All right, let me wish you a great day. And thank you so much for joining.